Is there anybody out there?
Excel Podcast.
Excel Podcast.
Facebook, DJ Mallorca Lee.
You're listening to Mallorca Lee's Excel Podcast.
Hi and welcome to another episode of my Excel Podcast. This one was recorded a good while ago with an old friend, and we sat down and talked about his journey through music. I thought now would be a good time to release it, as I'm going down to Liverpool to catch up with him and play a gig alongside Cyanide, X-Ray, Kendo, Lee Downey and Dream Frequency. Here's DJ Trix's journey through music.
Excel Podcast.
This is the Excel Podcast, and my guest for this chat is DJ Trix. Trix, whereabouts in the world are you right now?
I live in a place called Heswell, which is on the Wirral, Merseyside. So we're like a peninsula between Liverpool and North Wales, and we're connected to Cheshire.
Everything good?
Oh yes, look, where I live is lovely. I can be anywhere within 15 minutes. I can be in Liverpool, Chester, all the airports. There's Manchester and Liverpool. I can be in North Wales up a hill in half an hour. So it's one of these lovely little places where you can kind of dip in and out and then come home and be away from it all. So it's
be away from all the madness.
Yeah.
Well, on these podcasts, mate, like I've spoke to you before, is basically just talking about your journey through music, sort of thing, right? And we'll start obviously at the start, where all good stories start, I imagine, sort of thing, you know. And for anybody who's like wondering what's going on here, I mean, like I've told you before, you're definitely one of my favourite DJs for like back in the day, you know, technically, and the tunes that you were playing. So even for me chatting to you, you know, although we've chatted loads, it'll just be good to hear about the story of how you got into things, and you know, highs and lows and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
the chats you have in a tent at the back of a festival tends to be a little bit more. When you're chatting at the back of a tent at a festival, it tends to be a little bit more random.
Yeah, I know.
Get much of a story out. It's normally just jumping up and down and looking for the bar. So,
well, we're more relaxed. We're at home and all that, so it's all good.
Okay, cool.
So, like going right back to the start, was music always in the family, or what was your first kind of introductions to music?
I was a geek. I was a proper anything that was new and gadgety and electronic. I was born in '68, so I was growing up through the '70s and the '80s, and it was all digital watches and home computers.
Yeah.
And that's what I got into initially. That was the thing I focused on. But then obviously with all of that came all the synthesizers. So you had Depeche Mode and you had Kraftwerk and you had all of that. And that's where I just took off. It was a bit nuts, you know. It was like all this amazing stuff that was happening in that era. The way the music changed from being, it was just drums and guitar and bands and whatever else, and then all of a sudden there was these noises and stuff that was just ear catching. So that's how I got into music. It niggled my ear listening to this amazing electronic music.
I mean, obviously the synth explosion, but just I'm picking up on what you said there about digital watches and all that. And I actually remember when they sort of came. I mean, that's how mad it is. You know, like any young listener listens probably thinking, "Fucking digital watch, what they're talking about." But that was a thing when they came out, wasn't it?
Oh mate, I can remember only having 3 channels on the telly.
Yeah.
I was there before Channel 4, you know, and the telly, you had to tune it in with a big knob, and it was black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, the best one, snooker on a Saturday, in black and white. Think about that. And it happened. The guy was explaining it, you know, see the ball there on the left, up a bit from the other one. Yeah. Oh, so
and convincing yourself you could see the colours in black and white.
Well, anything that came out like that, like I remember like TV games, ping pong or whatever, on your telly, and think about what you've got now with Xboxes and stuff. That was the start of it, and it was when you don't have that and then you have it, it's more exciting than when you're halfway through the progression of TV, you know, consoles or digital watches or phones or whatever it is. It was to have it when it was the first thing that came out. It's just like, wow.
I know. I think our generation's probably the last generation that's had no technology to technology, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if you feel the same. I'm like, AI, Martians landing. I'm prepared for any of it because we've kind of came from nothing to all this technology. So like nothing really surprises you anymore. But you can do that with technology. Great. It's just kind of like, of course you can.
Well, Star Trek has stood there, and now we've got iPhones, and they're other than getting beamed up, which I'm sure will be happening soon.
Yeah,
it's everything that's happened in the past, all the way that it was kind of explained what was going to happen, especially with phones. I mean, look at the phone you've got now, what you can do on it.
I know, it's frightening.
My dad, I try and show me dad. I'm like, Dad, we can FaceTime my friends in New Zealand if we want. And he was like, well, how do they know you're there? And all, it's astonishing what we can do. And kids today are just like, da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, they're all over it, accepting it.
So, like you say, it was an exciting era to be involved in. And I've not seen, maybe it's because I'm old, but I've not seen something that's come along, whether it be music or culture or a dance craze or something. They're all just little progressions now.
Yeah.
And I think the way the world is, because it's so open with the internet, it's very hard to have an explosion of something, because it's all, once it's out and it's diluted. Whereas years ago, like the punk, it was bubbling away there underground for years and years and years, and then it exploded. And that's what made the big hoo-ha about whatever it was. I guess, like that, hip hop and stuff like that. It's just.
I guess you're right. The kind of shelf life of new fashions, music, and all that's much shorter now. Whereas before, like you said, it was bubbling under. It was starting in certain parts of the country or the world, and then seeping into other places, and as people found out about it.
If you do the gig on Saturday night now, the whole planet knows, don't they?
Yeah,
literally the whole planet. With it, you can see it live half the time. So, whereas years ago, the only thing that would happen, I can remember this thing when I used to go into the DJ competitions. It was like a Bible to get the record mirror. James Hamilton, who was the guy that came around and followed all the competitions, was a brilliant journalist. And he'd do the write-up on the DMC competitions in Record Mirror. And you had to wait till the end of the month for that to come out.
Yeah.
So you'd be in this competition, you won it or you hadn't won it or whatever it was, but you wanted to see what had gone on. And that was the feedback. Whereas now it's like, well, you get home and everybody knows what's happening.
Yeah, it's instant. But see, like when, like you're saying, like synth explosion and all that, and that's really, your first kind of exciting about music. Before that, was there anything else that was kind of going on? Because a lot of other DJs now that I speak to, there was also like, it wasn't so much a gang thing. We spoke about it before as well. There was maybe skateboarding or BMXing or breakdancing. Is that going on at the same time, or is this later from when you discover music?
That was obviously later. The skateboarding was around that era, wasn't it? In the 70s and that, but in the 80s I got into BMXs. And I still love those. I think you do as well. We have this passion for those funny little bikes, and it was what was brilliant seeing it all at the Olympics. The music changed when hip hop arrived. And was that the first kind of music that you thought was your music, or was you earlier influenced by like the synth, or when did you start buying records? It was the electronic music that I got into was the obvious stuff. It was the Human League and all of that. It was everywhere, and it wasn't an influence. It wasn't when what's his name, Malcolm McLaren brought Buffalo Girls out. When that video came on, that was the change. That was like, wait there, what the hell is this? Yeah. And it was different to electronic music at that time. It wasn't synths and stuff. It was all chopped up and scratched and whatever. And that's, again, one of these things that was so fresh, and bang, there you go. Never seen this before, have you? And it was exciting. And I got hooked on that. I think a lot of people did. They either wanted to spin on your head or scratch records, and that was it. And it was that was a real turn. But remembering at the same time, or literally a year or two after, house music started to seep in. And here's this dancey music that used kind of hip-hop beats, some of them. And that was using the synths, and there was sampling stuff. And so I was like this kind of hip house, they used to call it, didn't it? It was the combination of hip hop and house. And so you could have explained me as hip house because I love both.
So when was your first set of decks? Or did you tamper with actually getting synthesizers, or was it the Malcolm McLaren thing that made you think, I want a set of decks, or was it hip hop, or when are you getting your decks?
It was a combination of being a geek when I was younger and being into electronics. And I used to actually want to build my own mobile disco. So I had the Tandy catalogue when it first came out, and I'd sit there and I'd write it all up, and I'd, how I was going to do it and do the circuit diagrams and everything. I never built it, but that's what I would thrive off. And I used to stalk the fellas in Tandy, be walking around looking for stuff. So it was, I suppose, what kind of era would that have been? Yeah, so that was really early. That was when I was before a teenager. I wanted to kind of do that. So when Malcolm McLaren came out with this twin deck, when he was doing something different with the music, that's when I was like, I've got to get some of these record players just to either DJ, just to play music. But I'd seen the scratching thing, so it was that. I had my first pair of decks was a pair of Fisher. They were belt drive, and they had vari speed, but it wasn't like vari speed.
No pitch control.
It was just anything. But I took the rubber mats off it, and I put some pieces of paper on it to scratch on, and it got me going. And then I ended up getting a job in a hi-fi shop, which I loved. And there was one of the lads there that was into American radio, and he used to do his own American radio shows, and they were brilliant. So, like an era where it was one of the only proper jobs I had, and I loved it there. It was brilliant. And while I was there, I was able to get a pair of Technics turntables for trade price. So I think I got
before you go on to your Techniques, and you try to mix records and scratch records in the house with your Fisher decks, Yes.
No, I did that. I was already doing that. I had a Phonic MRT 60 mixer, and I was putting mixes together and doing tapes and giving them to my mates. Yeah. And then also there was like burger bars, local burger bars that were late night burger bars, and I'd say to the lads, "There's some tapes for you," and they used to play them in the burger bars. So everybody was hearing this stuff. I knew. It might sound nuts, but I knew exactly what to do with a pair of Technics before I'd even got them.
Before you got them? Do you think that's because of your time on the Fisher decks?
It was I suppose it was, but I hadn't touched the Technics, but I knew what it would feel like. I knew that the torque would be instant, and they were stable, and they were solid, and they were big.
I mean, even getting things like, back in the day, I remember I had friends that were like hip hop DJs and stuff, and getting the grease paper and all that for under your slip mats, that was a big game changer for them. When did you start picking up these tricks kind of thing? Was there a scene building where you were growing up, and what kind of music was getting played?
Not really. Well, in Liverpool there was quite a bit, and then I ended up getting my first gig from a guy called Dezza, and Dezza's half of the Bassheads. That's
right, yeah.
So Dezza was one of the local DJs at a club nearby in Birkenhead called Atmosphere, and Atmosphere was just a normal disc, what you call a disco. So you'd start off with a warm up, he'd play some chart music. We had a slowy section. You know what I mean? It was that
the erection section.
The erection section, yeah. So there was all of that. But what Dezza also did was he was obviously he loved his soul and funk, but obviously with house music appearing and hip hop, he started doing a night on a Monday called the Deaf House. So and what he would do is he'd have all these record guys come up from London. They had Soul to Soul on. I think Soul to Soul paid them to do a PA. That's before they were even. They had all kinds of people on, and I thought, this is perfect for me. Here I am scratching hip hop and house music, and he's doing a night doing that. So a mate of mine's dad had one of the sooty vans, the little Suzuki vans.
Yeah.
Right. He was an antiques dealer. So he used to drive around in this little sooty van picking up antiques. So my mate got his dad's van, and we drove down to Birkenhead to pick up Dezza because Dezza couldn't drive. We threw Dezza in the back of the sooty van, and we drove him up to my mum and dad's house, right? It must have looked like we were abducting him. So we literally plonked him in my bedroom, sat him on the bed. I DJed for 10 minutes, and he says, "Can you do the next Deaf House?" And that was it. And from there on in, I did a few of the deaf houses. I ended up getting not a residency. I was the warm-up DJ in Atmosphere on the Fridays and Saturdays. And some weeks I'd end up picking up glasses and helping. You know, I just got involved in that little club, and it was a great little learning place for me.
But I think that's part of the magic in it. It's like, you know, like you're saying, you're picking up glasses. You're just doing anything to be in the kind of scene that you love. You know, it's almost like your driving force, your passion in it. You just want to be playing records, and you'll do anything within reason to get to do records. You know, whether it being taking your techniques to the club or, you know, everything and anything to get that gig in it.
Well, mate, they have flashing lights and lighting controllers, and so it just pick up some glasses, Mike, and then you can go and play about with the pulsar lighting controller. And I was like, yeah. You know, these things are worth thousands. There's Technics in the club. There was a Formula Sound mixer. It was like,
what year's this, Mike, and what kind of stuff was you playing?
85, 86.
Right.
So it was the obvious hip hop stuff of the era. So it was like Public Enemy and Eric B and Rakim and all
Amazing
of that.
Amazing time for music, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then obviously I can remember getting Steve Silk Hurley, Jack Your Body. I remember it was Jeff Young. Was it Jeff Young used to do the Radio 1? Was it Jeff Young? Yeah, it was. Yeah,
this is like before Pete Tong and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he was. He's before Pete Tong, and he used to do it. And he played. I'm sure it was him that played it. Jack Your Body. And I thought, I'm going to have that. And I found this shop in Newton Le Willows called Hot Wax, right? And it was run by a guy called Kev Edwards. And I rang him up because everyone said, if you want imports or anything like that, Kev Edwards, Newton Le Willows, Hot Wax. So I rang him up and he says, yeah, I'll get the order of that. I ended up just sending Kev Edwards postal orders, because obviously I was too young to have checkbooks and all of that. So I'd send him postal orders of money, and he just sent me music back. I didn't know what I was buying. I'd say things like Jack Your Body and all the rest of it. But he would just send me a load of stuff. And for how he did it, mate, every record was like, this is brilliant. So he plied me with house music, and that's what really got me hooked. It was just...
I mean, at the time you're DJing, you're playing hip hop, hip house. Can you see a sea change in the crowd that's coming? Do you see dance music coming into things and taking over hip hop? Because there was definitely a fork in the road, wasn't it? People went hip hop or they went house music after the initial explosion. Yes, yeah. It fragmented pretty quickly, especially with the dance music side of it. I'm remembering the rest of the nights. The night I was doing the special night, the Deaf House night, was on a Monday night. So the Thursday, Friday, Saturday was still a disco. So that kind of slowly came in. And what I noticed in the disco was the people were becoming more casual with their wear and the way that they wear. And they were asking for the music that was on the Monday, but they were asking for everything. And quite rightly, like you say there, then it started to split a bit, and hip hop became more hip hop, and house music became its own kind of thing. Was there a sort of, I don't know if you were ever like mad for your football and all that, but was there ever a sort of football casual element in the clubs and all that as well, or I just think that was happening elsewhere?
That it was too smart initially in the club. When it was a disco, you had to turn up with a shirt on and a suit,
shoes and all that.
Yeah, it was very much like that. It didn't get to t-shirts and footy tops for years. Uh-huh. Not in the clubs I was in anyway. It was obviously elsewhere that was happening. That was more in the bars, to be fair.
Yeah.
But at that era, no, there was a lot of people actually dressing up to go out. It was like a special occasion, which seems to have changed a bit. So
your Monday nights are sort of you're mixing from hip house to house music. When do you start doing all it, or is that happening at the same time? You're cutting and scratching and then like the DMCs and stuff. How does that come about?
Well, at that time, it was just I was competing, or I started competing in, was it 86 or 87? I think it was 87. I started competing in them. So it was that era. So I had the support of that club. It was really good, actually. So all the locals would travel. If I had to kind of bus somewhere to go into a competition, there'd be a busload of them turn up. Brilliant. And it was brilliant. It was really, really
home
nice
support.
to have that support. Yeah. And yeah, so I kind of did that until obviously I won. I kind of got a couple of UK finals. I think I got a third and a second or whatever. And then one year, it was 89, we competed. And at the time, it was Americans winning the DMC World Championship all the time. It was like this run of DJ Cheese, and there was Cash Money, who was amazing. There was all these kind of cool DJs. So they did, and I think it was also a financial thing. They started doing a European Championship, and that was held. Go back. So anyone that had competed in a DMC competition around the world and got to their final, so a UK finals, Swedish final, French final, as long as it was within Europe, you could compete then. You were then relevant to go into the European Championship. Which obviously I won that one. And that's when I just took off then. That was me away.
I mean, how's that coming about? I know, like, how are you even finding out? Is this like in music magazines, or is it somebody saying, hey, you want to get into some of that? You want to give that a shot? And also, how's the name come about? How did you get your DJ name?
Well, the DJ name was from breakdancing. I just thought of a name, and it was Trix. I used to body pop. I used to love body popping, so for some reason, it's just a name that stuck.
Did you tell me some story about who used to carry your lino?
Oh, what's his name? He was on the telly this morning. I've forgotten his name. You know what? He lived in Mells. Oh, maybe let me think of his name. Fuck, I've forgotten his name.
The famous actor.
Yeah, he's James Bond, but he's just about to so I didn't know this, mate. And you know when you kind of go, oh, it was him that used to carry the lino for us, right? Yeah. I was chatting to a mate of mine. He says, yeah, don't remember him. But then...
Daniel Craig, innit?
Yeah, so Daniel Craig. He used to go to Henry Mell School, which is like 5 minutes down the road here. And he used to go into my mate's wine shop, right, at Christmas to get his mum and dad wine. And he's got pictures of him there with him. So... It was bizarre when somebody reminds you, kind of go, do you remember him? He's like, yeah, the fellow that used to carry the line. That's Daniel Craig. And you go, oh.
That's mad, isn't it?
You know, anyway, yeah. So he used to carry the line around when we went to Birkenhead or sometimes to Liverpool. It was like a little breakdancing crew of people. Yeah. And I can't remember him that well, but I remember there was a lad that did. This is the best one. People like Dave Seaman, who's the progressive house DJ. He used to work for DMC, and he was the guy that used to go to the chippy and get the dinners for you. It's just it's nuts, all the people that have come from this and kind of taking it and run. Yeah. Brilliant.
The amount of time when you told me that, I was like, no way. And then I've told that story a few times, and people are just like, no, fuck off, no way. And I'm telling you, man, I'm telling you.
I was showing my son the other day because there was a thing on our local Facebook. There's like a local Facebook thing for the Wirral and one for Heswell and one for Caldy, the local whatever. Yeah. And they're like, here's local boy Daniel Craig in his things like Caldy or Henry Mell's school rugby team. And there he is, sat at the front, with a squidged up face and all of the rest. There was all kinds of personalities around here. Because at Christmas, you'd always see Paul McCartney because his mum and dad used to, when they were alive, live in Lower Heswell, where I live. So they'd come here every Christmas, and I can remember as a kid, and they were like, "Oh, it's Paul McCartney." I was like, "Huh?" No. Where I live is it's a bit of a posh place, mate. So it's football players and and celebrity types. I was here when it was just big houses, It was it.
So you've got the name DJ Trix. You're doing the DMCs. I just thought to take a jump in and ask you about that then. Yeah. So how did was it just people at the club saying, mate, you want to get into this DMC and all that kind of stuff? And
a bit of that. Like I said before, I'd look at Record Mirror. That was like the DJ Bible. And I just seen the competitions in there.
And the DMCs were fucking massive, you can't really put any words really, or can I do it justice how huge these things were?
When I first got involved with it, I like to put it like this: it was called Disco. It's Disco Mix Club, and it was called Disco Mix Club, and they had the old logo. And the change was when I kind of got involved, and it became a bit more hip hop.
Yeah.
Then it became like this DMC, even though it's the same thing. It was massive then, but what they did, the competitions were in clubs on the club equipment. So it was very much DJ mixing and with a bit of scratching, but you'd do a couple of running mixes and whatever. And it wasn't what you'd see today. It's obviously progressed into that slowly but surely. And then gone, to be honest with you, it's gone a little bit geeky, bit too anal in some respects. But I love watching some of the guys now. But even when you were doing it, there was a showmanship and all that kind of stuff, and the tricks, and it's a performance. You're doing a performance with somebody else's music, and that's what it was. What's
the kind of nerves going into something like that at such a young age? You know, obviously it was at 89 that you won it.
Yeah. I never got nervous. I don't get nervous at stuff like that. Not really. I was more anxious to get on and do it. Yeah. I suppose it's the same as you when you want to do a show and you're ready to go on. You're biting at the bit to go on. Aren't you?
Yeah. Let's get this done.
Wait to get on and do this, and that's how I felt. I did have a lady I knew who was one of these psychotherapists, and she gave me a little mantra that I used, and that worked if I was ever feeling a little bit overwhelmed. But I tended to kind of, whenever I was in a competition, keep myself out the way. And when they say, okay, you're on now, I'd run in and do my thing and then come out of it again. And it was the same in clubs. You know, I like to do the thing and then come out. I didn't really watch the rest of them.
Yeah, or mess about partying too much or whatever kind of thing.
Not at that time, no. That
so, just to kind of talk about winning it, how did that feel? You know, how much work did you put into your set? What kind of crowd was there watching? How did that come about?
Well, it was at the BCM in Mallorca. It was their opening year.
Even 1989, a young kid flying over there to do a DJ. That's just mind-blowing shit, isn't it?
Well, 3 weeks later was even nuttier. But so you're at the BCM. It's their opening year.
That was a massive club. It still is, isn't it?
It had the multicolored laser show, all the gear. It had. If you were in there at that time, it was Italians all suited. The dancers were these mad fellas, all kind of make-upped up with fans. It was absolutely incredible. It was none of this kind of, these T-shirts that you get that kind of turn into a twizzy when you washed them once with cans of beer in your hat. That seems to be in there now. There was none of that. It was a really swanky to-go-to place. And they had this DJ competition on, and I think some of me tells me that half the DMC staff were like, we could do with a holiday every 2 weeks here. And that's what they were. They were just flying out to New York and having a ball and then going home. But no, it wasn't. I had quite a bit of support there. There was a few people flew over for the final. And again, it was very much on my own. I went over and kind of stayed on my own until I did my bit. So I just enjoyed Mallorca and ran on, did my little bit, and then went and hid away again.
What kind of tracks was you mixing in your set?
Oh, Public Enemy, 900 Number, Eric B. and Rakim, Halna Fish. It was all...
You could probably put the set together now, couldn't you, just through memory?
Yeah, I can do that kind of stuff with my eyes shut. I did it so much. I used to send my poor mum around the twist practicing.
Yeah,
hours and hours of it's time. It was just constant, So my poor mum, you just hear, will you turn it down kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was not too nervous. I used to enjoy the competitions. I used to thrive off them. And I used to, like I say, just keep myself, didn't look at anyone else, so it didn't affect me.
You haven't even watched any other competitors?
I've, you know what, even when I don't listen to many other DJs, and I found that that's helped me because I've always just done my own thing and picked music that I've kind of thought that gets me, and not thought or not listened to anybody else thinking, that was massive for him. There were certain things that you do. You can't miss, what somebody was doing with, certain tricks. But I always found that the best way to be was to be original and to not do it. And I didn't enjoy, if I watched somebody else, it would put me off if I'd have thought of something like that, the trick. So obviously there's only so much you can do with 2 records at once, and there's, the trickery. And if I seen somebody else doing something, I'd feel a bit like, oh God, I thought that was mine.
Uh-huh.
But, great minds think alike in that kind of situ.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've won that. You've went abroad, won this competition. What's it like coming home? Is that just somebody switched the light on? Is it things changing?
Yeah. I borrowed. I haven't asked my parents to borrow any money off them until then. And I said to my mum and dad, can you loan me £200? So I've got some spends when I go to Mallorca. I had to go over, I think I split it. I must have split like 70 quid each time I went. I spent. I wasn't spending much.
But you're going over what was it? Not just once. What, you're going back and forth for each heat?
So there was a couple of heats, and then there was the semi-finals, and then there was the final. And so we were all getting flown over. It was a great ball. This crowd of DJs kind of hanging out in Mallorca, having a bit of a giggle. So I when I won it, I won a cup and bits and bobs, and I won £1,000. That was the prize. So when I came home, I left the cup on the kitchen table at my mum and dad's with the 200 quid around it. So they'd lent me. And because they were on holiday, I'd come home. They'd actually gone on their holidays. And then literally 2 days later, I was back on a plane shooting off. So I was really proud. That was the proudest thing, was to go, thanks for lending me the money. Yeah. Here it is all back. By the way, look at what I did, and I'm sorry about the racket you've had to put up with, Mum, for the last 5 years, but I've kind of achieved something from it. It's hard for my parents to understand what I was doing. For most kind of adults, if you started scratching...
it's just alien, isn't it?
Yeah, they were just like, what the hell are you doing?
But then they're seeing a cup and you're winning a prize and all that, and then it all starts to kind of make sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. That was the first time I don't think they still don't guess an awful lot of what I've done. They just knew I was enjoying myself, and I think that was what was kind of that kept them kind of happy.
Yeah,
and they obviously slowly see money coming in from what I was doing, so it wasn't.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So, like, you've won, you've came home, you were saying you're away again. Are you got a job at this time, or is music becoming your full time?
Excel Podcast.
I gave up work literally the month before the DMC Europeans. I thought, I'm going to go for this. I mean, I'm not good in working with other people. I like to kind of do things on my own. And so I kind of sacked work and DJ'd. I was living at home with my mum and dad, so finances weren't too much. I was obviously giving mum and dad some keep and stuff, but I wasn't renting my own place or none of that nonsense. When I came home from that, it was pretty much straight away, okay, now we need you to do a European tour, which was all of the European countries that had competed. And then, so we were all over the place. I hooked up with a rapper, a mate of mine called L Double. And so we did these shows where he would front it and I'd be scratching at the back. And then every now and then we had a couple of mates that were dancers, and they'd come and do a little show. It was kind of cool. So we did the European tour with DMC, and then some of those countries would ask us back and say, can you come and do some more shows? So some of the shows, mate, I was turning up. I remember once Wilfred de Bass, who runs DMC France, says, we got a show for you. It's in a place called Bercy in Paris. And Bercy's a bit like Wembley. It's huge. It's this huge, big, where you have concerts on, And we were like, okay, yeah. We thought we'd be in a little side room, mate. We thought so we pulled into this place, mate. When you drive into somewhere and you drive in, I've driven in here. And that's how big it was. And it was a world record attempt at the world's biggest disco, right? So they turned Bercy into a disco, but it was just a load of acts on. It's live on, was it NTL? Is that the French telly?
Yeah, I think so. It's French or German or something, isn't it?
Yeah, it was on one of these things live. And the lineup was people like Sydney Youngblood, Adiva, Technotronic, Dr. Baker, and then before us was Bros. Right? I'm there going, okay, well, we had Bros to warm up for us, but obviously Bros was the end act, and we were like, okay, is everyone going home now? Listen to these guys while we walk. But mate, we went out there. Lee thought, I'm going to learn a bit of French here. You know, I'm live on the telly. We've got to at least say hello in French. Whatever he learned was completely wrong. So he runs out there, mate, in front of, I think it was 25,000 people, grabs the microphone and translated said, "Come on, Paris, make some arm." He just got it completely wrong. And the whole of them were just looking at him. Anyway, we got away with it, and we had some fun doing them shows. But mate, some of the others... Oh, I could waffle on all night about the DMC tours and the different countries and what we got up to. Oh, it's incredible.
Were you getting a wage doing that as well, Mike? Were they giving you a wage to go and do the gig and all that?
Oh, God, yeah. All the shows we were getting paid for.
Brilliant.
And obviously I wasn't really spending much money. We were just getting flown around everywhere. So I was taking the money home and saving up a little bit.
You're getting loads of record promos sent to your house and all that as well at this point, I'd imagine.
But at the time, you'll remember, mate, you had to fill in all the forms to let them know what they
fax them back and all that shit.
Oh, God, yeah. And you were just like, you couldn't say, oh, this is shite, because then they wouldn't send you any more records. So you didn't just lie on all of them, didn't you? Just to say, oh, fantastic. Great. And I like
Club
the
reaction.
Yeah. But instead of, every now and then I'd be honest, I'd be like, this is just dross. And you kind of go, well, I didn't like you sending me stuff anyway. Which is stupid. You kind of think if you wanted feedback on a track, if you send a promo out, you don't want everyone saying it's great. You print up 10,000 of them and nobody buys it.
Yeah, I think, but you're right. Yeah, it's that kind of weird position where you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you as and giving you all these free promos, but at the same time, you don't want to be lying and saying it's brilliant when you know it's not. But we've all been guilty of that, innit? Like, great reaction, never even played it. It's never even been out of the box.
No, I know lads that used to just turn up at the record shop and say, "Do you want all of these?" Just flog them.
Yeah, sell their promos to the record shop or whatever.
Yeah, they were just like, I'm not going to play it.
Yeah. Mad. I mean, right, so, when you're doing all the DMC, I never even knew that you're doing as much touring with the DMC, but then obviously it makes sense, doesn't it? You're doing all that. I mean, is it predominantly like hip-hop music? Are you putting a bit of hip house in there? Or
For the DMC, it was just hip-hop and beats. I'd throw some house music in. I used to try and include different types of music, and I used to try and include music that was really obvious. I used Black Box Ride on Time quite a few times, and you kind of think that's a bit kind of cheesy. But when you're manipulating music that everybody understands what it normally sounds like, and you do something clever with it, then they can appreciate it.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the scratch guys are doing stuff with just beats that you don't understand anyway. So you don't, unless you know what he's doing, it doesn't sound any different. It sounds really good, but you can't hear this cleverness that he's doing because you can't recognize the music. It was always good to use something that was familiar.
That's a brilliant way of putting it, and even just as you're describing that to me, for somebody who does it, like that's a nail on the head. For that's a brilliant way to get your message across of what you're doing when you're mixing up like a big track that somebody knows. And I never even thought about that until you said that there. Just totally makes sense.
There's a guy, funny enough, the guy I was talking to on the phone before we started with you is a guy called Rasp. And Rasp competes in the competitions now, and he does it. I mean, he uses obvious hip-hop tracks, so it's still in the genre of the music that he would be doing anyway, but he'll use a track that everybody knows. And it was more, the whole crowd would get into it, whereas a lot of these competitions now, that, like I said before, they get a bit kind of chin scratchy guys where they're all kind of dissecting it, which is brilliant. But if you brought all this crowd along, they want to be entertained, and it's really good to do that with music that you're at least a bit more familiar with, And
how did you get on? So you're doing the tour, you're getting gigs back home as well, and is there another? Do you have to enter the championship the following year and all that? Is there pressure on you to do that?
I did do it. I think I came third in it. And I was a bit miffed with myself because I was literally touring. And I didn't have time to actually go home and work out a new set. So I was constantly doing stuff, but I didn't have a set properly, that was all arranged, that I'd practiced like I had for the actual competition. But to be honest with you, I'd got involved with Vestax by then, and that had taken me even further afield. So I was I knew what I was going to be involved in there.
So what, you're their official DJ or working alongside Vestax mixer?
Well, like I said to you before, after doing the tour from DMC, when I first came back, I looked in this magazine and there was an advert for Vestax. It was the first ever advert for them. Vestax came from Vestafire, which is a guitar pedal brand from Japan. So they started making these mixers. And they had one mixer on this, I'm sure it's like a half page of a magazine. And there was a load of mixers, but they were built like tanks. You could see they were well built. And at the time we were using a Gemini MX 2200, which was a real piece of shit mixer, but the layout was perfect. The layout was what you'd see on a scratch mixer now, which is just the two faders, the crossfader, and your cue. And that was it. There was nothing else to clutter it up. The shape was right. It was perfect between two turntables. And they had one mixer, Vestax, on this little advert, and it was called an 05 Mark II. And it was tiny. It had an absolutely minute crossfader. And then the input faders were really long and they were slightly off center. So there were certain elements of this mixer that were amazing. The size of it, this amazing little tiny crossfader, and it kind of emulated the Gemini, whereas it was very basic. But this thing looked like it was built like a tank, and it was. So here I am as the European champion, thinking I'll be a bit of a cocky bugger. And I rang up Vestax and I spoke to the guy who started it in the UK, called Rob Peck. And I just said, I am the new European champion. Do you want to sponsor me? And so Rob said, well, no, I don't want to. We won't sponsor you. But he says, because I'd really like one of your little mixers. He says, well, what we'll do is, as the European champion, can you review the mixer for us for a magazine, and you can keep the mixer? And I thought, well, that's better than nothing, Yeah. So I did that, and I gave an honest review. There was, like I said, there were certain elements that were absolutely brilliant, and there were certain bits that were absolute garbage. And so he just says to me, oh, well, that's brilliant. Can you do some demos for us? So, yeah, no problem. 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane to Tokyo.
Fuck.
To go and do this. So exactly.
What's this, 1990 or 89 still?
Literally the start of 1990. So I'd say 2 months before, mate, I'm borrowing 200 quid off my mum and dad. And this time, here I am flying off to Tokyo. Mate, I get there.
Flying into the future.
Oh, well, you've been to Japan, haven't you? It is amazing. Exactly what you think. When you kind of go, wow, there's gadgets and this, that. Yeah, and it's better than that. And I got there, and this was just mind blowing. So they said, we've got a gig at a record shop in Tokyo. So I was like, okay. So I turn up. There's 2 cardboard cutouts of me, life-size cardboard cutouts. you got to put it into perspective. You got to go, what? I couldn't get my head around it. So there we are doing that. I do this show. They said, okay, right, we're going to go and do a show called Tokyo to London. I was thinking, what is it? He says, oh, it's Japanese TV. So we turn up at this TV show. I'm apparently the first ever scratch DJ on Japanese telly. And I'm doing this show. There's 3 comedians. I'd love to find out what their names are. And they're just nuts. These Japanese guys, and it's a bit like hitting each other over the head with pans and all that.
3 Stooges kind of thing.
Like that. It's the Japanese they're on, and apparently they're huge. And then I did this I did this show on Japanese telly. I had an interpreter called Willie, who was this guy who was from an American army base, who obviously spoke Japanese. He had this huge big lump in the middle of his forehead. And whenever he spoke to me, mate, when you kind of like moly, that kind of, I could just see Willie's little bump on his head. Yeah, I'm doing. So when I watch back on this, I'll try and find the show for you. I had it on VHS and whatever, I haven't transferred. But you'll see me just stare. Well, that was the start of it going nuts, because I was involved with this manufacturer who was fresh and new, and I just hit the nail on the head and jumped into bed with them at the perfect time.
Right time, yeah. Just the stars aligned.
Yeah.
So was you mixing live and all that on these TV shows and everything?
Yeah. Oh, it's just vinyl. Me and vinyl and a needle. That was it. It was. I mean, there was a few skips and jumps and that, but one thing you did learn when you were doing that kind of stuff at that level in that era was something skips and jumps. You kind of turn it into part of the show. I've taken the needle off the wrong record. I think every DJ's done that at some point, right? And so I took, if I ever did that, I'd kind of look at my watch, put the needle back on and carry on and do, just kind of ad-lib a bit. Yeah. So we did, but then my involvement with Vestax got quite deep. I came home from Japan, and obviously I had this little mixer, and all the flaws and the faults that I thought, well, I'm going to draw this. My dad worked in a drawing office. So obviously nowadays it's CAD design. It was just full of draftsmen, this thing, and it was just all drawing boards and stuff. So at home at my dad's, there was always like a little drawing board and all the protractors and all the gear. So I measured this mixer I had at home. So they measured the size of it and the size of the faders and all the knobs and all the buttons and everything like that. And I drew the mixer that I thought would be perfect. And it had the little tiny crossfader still that the original 05 that I'd seen had. But then the input faders I put in the perfect position above the crossfader. And I said to them, could those be little tiny faders as well? And so on this mixer, you could have either tiny little 25mm input faders and crossfader, or you could have full length ones. So you could take the faders out, put new ones in and chop and change it. So if you were a DJ that liked the full length of the fader, happy days. If you were doing more kind of deck to deck stuff, you might just want this tiny fader, which was more like a switch, between them. And so I did that. I added another thing, which was like putting a headphone socket at the back, because at the time we were doing a lot of body tricks in the competitions. And I even put the Vestax logo on this mixer and put my tag on it. I signed it, and I even wrote a Trix version, made it look as if it was my mixer as a bit of a whatever. Gave it to Rob Peck. So there's an idea for a mixer. So
that's just, sorry for interrupting, but that's, for me, hearing that story, that's amazing, right? And is that's kind of a jump along from the young kid who was drawing his deck setup.
I was a geek. A geek, mate. I was just
it's just coming together, isn't it? Yeah, and this is why
it was full circle. It was like, okay, I wasn't giving them this mixer to say go make that. It was here's an idea.
Yeah.
So.
What a total kind of innocent, like if I could do a mixer, that's exactly what I'd do with that mixer kind of thing.
That's what I'd like. That's a dream if you could do it. So a few months later, he says, can we go to Orlando to do it was like a NAMM show. They have a show in LA each year, which is the big trade music show called NAMM. I'm sure it was like a winter NAMM, and it was held in Orlando on International Drive at the exhibition center. And at the time, it was the Hyatt Hotel, which is there now. It used to be called the Peabody, and they had ducks. It was a bit nuts. They had the logo was ducks, and they used to have these ducks in the hotel that would come down and swim in the paddling pool or whatever. Anyway, we're staying at this hotel, and Rob Peck says to me, Mr. Sheeno's arrived tonight. He's the owner of Vestax. He's got something for you in his room. Go up and see him. I just thought, wait there a minute. I've never met this boy.
70s Top of the Pops horror stories.
If you know Japanese people, you'll know if they say something like that, you're going to get a gift of some sort.
Yeah.
Like they turn up with suitcases just full of gifts. That's what they do. Every time they fly somewhere, they'll bring you a gift. It's lovely. Anyway, so I get up there, and there's Mr. Sheeno, meet him, he's lovely, blah, blah, blah. So he pulls out this box out of his suitcase, and it's the same box as they sent me, which was PMC 05 Mark II. But you know, one of them kind of rubber stamps? It just had a T next to it, this big T. I was like, okay, what's that? And he said, you open it like that. I opened it, mate, and the mixer that I drew on my dad's drawing board at home was made in front of me.
It must have blew your mind.
I was just like, this is insane. My signature, everything. What you see when you see a Trix, the 05 Trix mixer that I made, that's what I drew. I didn't, it's exactly it to scale.
Wow.
Everything was that, and I was just absolutely blown away. No, there was no DJs at the time had their name on anything.
No,
it was like this is crackers. And the good thing was, it was a bloody good mixer.
You must have just felt like, fuck it, I've made it here. What, I don't know. I mean, what's going through your? What age are you, and what's going through your head?
What would that have been? 1990, maybe 91, 90. I was about 21, 22.
Wow.
It was a dream, mate. It was just you've gone from touring all these countries over to Japan. Here's your own mixer, and absolutely gobsmacked. I remember coming home and feeling a bit surreal with it. I wanted to show somebody, and my friend owned a clothes shop in Liverpool, so I just went into the shop and said, "Look at this." and he was a bit busy at the time, so he didn't. When he's like, "Oh, that's great, that Mike. I've just got to go and serve a customer," and he was like, "Do you not know what that is?" kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's sunk in over time. But so then I got involved with Vestax, not only designing bits of equipment or advising on bits of equipment, but obviously I was doing a lot of demos for them.
What would the demo involve? What, you're just taking certain new mixers and?
Yeah, we do. Well, we go to all the shops, or we go to a show and trade shows. Some of the trade shows we went to, mate. God, there's one called SIB, and it was in Rimini in Italy. And we flew into whatever the airport is near Venice, and we went into Venice for the day. So there's a load of DJ fellas. So Venice with a load of fellas isn't the one,
Yeah,
so
there's no romance there.
Drove down to Rimini, and we did this trade show in Rimini. I could make even the stories here for Rimini. I was doing shows in the day, so you'd kind of do a little scratch demo once an hour for 10 minutes, and you'd come back and do it again. I met this fella in there. He was there. He must have been 60 odd. His girlfriend looked about 20. It was one of those. You could tell he was dripping in gold. It was a bit cheesy. And his girlfriend with this absolutely stunning looking thing. Anyway, he says to me, "Oh, are you going up to the Clay Packy party later?" Clay Packy make the lights with the mirrors, the kind of mad mirrors. Remember, it's a disco trade show. There was everything. There was smoke
everything's there.
Yeah. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I think we are going up to the Clay Packy." He says, "I might see you later." So anyway, we go up to this party. It looks like a Roman amphitheatre up in the mountains, and they've got all them lights on it, so it looks incredible. And we go in, and there's a pool there with a girl swinging across it on a swing. It was pretty cool. And this fella turns up, and he says, "Are you having a good night?" And I was like, yeah. He says, "Oh, this is my club." And I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic. What an ace place, It wasn't hip hop or dancey or anything. It was just, but it was a really nice place. So he says to me, "We're going on to another club now. Do you want to come with us?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, we'll go." Mate, we walk out. This is crazy. We walk out, and there's a car park full of Ferraris. Just a car park full of Ferraris. And so he opens this door of this F40, and I hop into this F40, and we all leave at once. So
you drive it. You're driving.
No.
Right.
No, I just sat in the passenger seat shitting myself. So they're all going around the mountainside of Rimini to this next club. But all of these Ferraris left at once. So we all leave this car park. There must have been 20.
A convoy of Ferraris. Fuck.
All red, all in a row. We get to this next club. This is the bit that got me, right? We pull in, and there's 2 car parks. One's full of cars. One is just for the Ferraris. So wherever these clubs were, they had a car park for this group of lads that were just driving around in these amazing cars.
Wow.
So the same night we drove down into Rimini, which is, I think you could class it as like a Ibiza. It's the party place of Italy, or it was at that time. and he was taking me and pulling up to, he pulled up to this bunch of women that I thought were women, absolutely stunning looking things. They must have been 6 foot odd. So he's there and he whistles this one over, and I'm in the passenger seat, so I can't move. I'm stuck, locked into, one of these mad, it's not like a normal seatbelt.
Aye, it's like the racing ones that go across you.
I wouldn't, if he said get out, I'd be like, you'd have to help me here. So this woman's coming over to me, 6'6", big hair, big long kind of mink coat or whatever it was. As she gets closer to the car, mate, she opens her coat. And it was like a bloody donkey. It was the first time I'd ever kind of encountered anyone transsexual at all. And the guy's there pissing himself laughing. And I couldn't get out. I was just kind of this thing going, endless stories.
Try to roll the window up.
It wasn't even a windy window, in them things. It's like some kind of, I'm scared to touch it. It's like some plastic window.
Wow.
Never-ending stories of trade shows.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're doing all that, and hip hop, hip house. What's happening with the dance music scene explosion round about you, and when are you kind of further getting deep into that? And is the Vestax thing and the trade shows, is that still going on all the way through the early 90s?
Yes, yeah. I always kept involved in that in some respect. What a lot of these manufacturers found was I was good at tuning in on when they were bringing a product out, what was good, but more importantly, what was bad, what wasn't worth doing. And that was the hardest thing. It's very good to put loads of stuff onto a piece of equipment and say, it's got all of this and all of this and all of this. It's when you filter it out to make that piece of equipment more usable. And a lot of stuff you kind of go, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
It's nobody uses it. Or the amount of people that do use it doesn't make it valid for it to be on a product.
Yeah, when you look at some of the mixers now, man, it's just fucking crazy. There's just too many buttons and flashing lights in it.
To a certain degree, it's good because you've got all of those facilities. It's mastering them that's the thing that seems to be very DJs don't. There's not many people that master the ins and outs of what they can do with that equipment. They'll pick their certain things that they're good at, but the ins and outs of it doesn't get mastered very much. I
suppose that's where you need to take the time to kind of learn what they're all doing and all that, innit?
Yeah, when you're doing a trade show, you're trying to show off all those bells and whistles. Yeah. That's the whole point of it. But when you're out playing live, it's doing it in a fashion where, yes, you're using all this stuff, but you do it subtly, and it's got to be, you can't just kind of constantly fiddle about with stuff, just go, I'm putting a reverb on. Or whatever. It's making it sound good. The end product still needs to sound good, not just me pressing buttons kind of. Yeah, so it's...
I mean... I want to kind of try and touch on how you're moving for there, getting into sort of dance music kind of thing, because where these trade shows and hip hop and stuff, is it a conscious effort? Are you moving to house music or dance music or rave music, or what? Or are you just juggling all types of music? What are you doing?
I was, because after a couple of years, when you're not the champion of a DJ thing, you're looking for gigs, and there's not much money in doing hip-hop gigs. There really isn't. And I obviously loved house music just as much. So I seen, this, and I would start collecting house music. And I remember competing in a competition at Mr. Smith's in Warrington, and that's where I met Robbie Nelson from Northern Ireland. Robbie was there because it was the North regional final, so he was flown over to do it there. And a few months after I won the DMC, about a year after, he says, would you come over and do some gigs? And as doing a scratch mixing show. So I went over and I says, yeah. And I did a couple of gigs for Robbie, doing DJ demo type stuff. And then I just said to him, I said, Robbie, I play house, I play house and techno and rave or whatever he wanted to call it. And so he flew me over to do a place called Circus.
Amazing club, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I had a guy It was run by a guy called Billy Dunseith. I think you know Billy.
Yeah.
And I can remember doing this gig, and I used to do this trick. I can remember literally seeing people kind of go, "What's he doing?" I did this trick, mate, where I'd be playing two tracks together in a mix, and then I'd stop one of the decks, and then I'd play that backwards, and you play it backwards by twiddling the center kind of bit of the, and then you fade out into the other one. It's a cool little thing I was doing in the scratch mixing things, but I was doing this with house music.
Yeah.
And that it kind of blew them away. And that's what I kind of thought, well, I'm going to start doing this music.
Is that just something you've thought on the spur of the moment at the gig on the night, or is it something that you're messing about in the house?
Excel podcast.
A lot of that was just purely because when you're doing the scratch mixing stuff, you're so kind of tuned into what the vinyl's doing that you can just do it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like when you're dancing, you don't know what you're going to do next, but you kind of do something.
Yeah.
Like you don't forget, do you? And just fall over. You'll do something. So it's a bit like that, where you have this kind of armory of, I know what to do. I can do this, and this. And if the situation's right, then I'll do it. So I never thought. I used to like not thinking about a DJ set and going with it, and taking the crowd somewhere. That was always good.
Yeah.
But it was this term where I wasn't getting much work doing DMC stuff, and I was more interested in the house music side of things and the dance music side of things. And I also seen that as there was more work doing that, and I enjoyed it. And
was the Irish one your first sort of club gig playing the dance music then, or?
Well, no, I was doing stuff over on on the Wirral and Liverpool, and then I was doing raves up in Manchester. It was all over the place over here, but it was when I started doing there. I don't know why, but then it took off, and I started doing a lot more back around Europe. I was just ringing up the old DMC people saying, "Remember me? Now I'll do this," and you'd either get a gig or you wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, but
you might need to put a light on there, mate. You're disappearing as the night goes on.
Well, I know. I know.
I think I've just talked to this silhouette.
It's for the best, to be fair. Yeah.
Stick a big light on. Splash out.
It's going to be like Tesco's now.
There he is.
There we go. Oh. Better. And we're back.
Nah, mate, switch it back off.
I know. I need to buff the top of my head.
So to jump back in, you're phoning up like old DMC contacts. You're doing raves in like North England and over in Ireland.
Yeah.
I mean, are you seeing like this kind of? I mean, I guess you're maybe busy doing all the trade shows and touring. Mm. Are you missing the kind of this sort of dance music early explosion, or are you very much aware of it kind of thing and keeping an eye on that as well?
I was in the thick of that as well. Yeah. So the trade shows were very much like come down here on a Saturday and Sunday and do the show and go, and that was once a month. Doing hip hop demos, it was here and there again. But the majority of my time, I was either buying dance music or I was obviously playing it as well.
Yeah.
But I've been looking for it and looking for different sounds, and it just merged into that. It was like, this is the way I need to go. I enjoyed playing that music and doing a little bit of the trickery that I was doing from the competitions to kind of spice it up. Mm-hmm. Like James Zabiela, he's playing dance music that everyone else plays, but he does it a bit more funky by chopping it up, and that's what I was doing then. It was just the same thing, just adding a little bit of flavour to it. And like I said before, it was hard. It's hard to be kind of subtle with some of these things, because you don't want to be scratching over a house music track all the way through. It's not, you do a little flick here and there, and just to add to it. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing that.
And are you feeling like the Irish are going more crazy for you than back home, or is it just kind of building up everywhere? You're getting a name for yourself. Are you starting doing your tapes and all that, the mixtapes and stuff, selling them at gigs?
God, yeah. Because
that was a great income for everyone back in the day, wasn't it?
Oh my God, mate! the amount of money that we made from tapes. I was doing 3 tapes a month, and I think we sold at least 1,000 of each tape every month.
Fucking hell.
This is cash, mate. There was just cash. I remember one day just walking along, there was a radio control car there. I'll have that. And then my mate selling a jet ski. I'll have that. It was just
Loads of money.
Yeah, well, it was, and it was cash. So it was just piling up, and mate, if I had $5,000 debt on a credit card and I won $5,000, I'd book a holiday. That's I'm terrible with it, right? So it was steak dinners and champagne, but I kind of, in some respects, you think, oh, you could have done something sensible with it, and you kind of go, but I wouldn't have had the laugh that I had.
Yeah, enjoying yourself.
I've had such a ball, and it was incredible. I don't think if I would have been all kind of, oh, I'm just going to go home now and save me money, it would just be, no, you got to enjoy it.
So you're doing the gigs. Is there any residencies coming about and all that? Because I don't know if I'm jumping too far, because the first kind of time we sort of crossed paths, it would have been the Drome days. Is that your residency that's coming up, or is that something that you'd always popped in and played, or what? No. The Drome before I was there was a group of lads. There was Dave Graham, there was Cy Edwards, John Cotton, and there was Philly and Rusty were there as well. And it was very much the obvious rave, the floppy hats and the glow sticks. It was a big rave, and the club was made for it. It wasn't made for it, but it was an old function cabaret club, so it had a lot of stages here and there. So it was great for a rave. But when I was approached, it was when Dave Graham and that team kind of decided to go to Liverpool, and they were left with Philly and Rusty, who were still DJing there, and the two managers. Well, no, sorry, one of the managers came in to see me at a club I was doing, a friend's club in New Brighton called RJ's. I was doing just like a Sunday night in there, and I knew this guy. His name's Paul Wells. Paul's went on to work with Carl Cox and run his own agency and stuff. But he came in and they came over and says, "Would you be interested in doing the Drome in Birkenhead?" And I said, "Well, I've got a lot of them, whereas I'm going over to Ireland every couple of weeks and I'm doing gigs here, there and everywhere. But let me have a look, because it's local and I know it's a big club and it's got a lot of people going to it." So I went down the following week and just thought I could easily slot into this. It's perfect, And what kind of year's that?
I would say that would have been maybe 93, 94, yeah. 90, well, or even 92. It's a bit of a blur.
Yeah. Early to mid 90s kind of thing.
Yeah. It was then. So I decided, yes, I'll do it. But it was like, okay, but at least once a month, I won't be here on a Saturday. I'll be away doing something at least once, or I can give you dates in advance where I can't be here. And if that helps you, and it did. What was normally happening then when I got stuck into the Drome, it'd be like, we've got Carl Cox on at the end of the month. It's like, well, I may as well go away and do a gig somewhere else, because there's no point in having two residents. We've got Carl on; he's going to be the main night, so you just need somebody to top and tail it.
Yeah. So
that's what I would do. Whenever there was something big on, that's when I'd kind of skedaddle and do my own little thing.
Sorry, Mike. What were you saying?
Yeah.
Was there a kind of year that you felt really comfortable in your skin in your residency, or maybe what I'm getting to was there a year where you felt was your kind of golden era or a peak? Those years when I was in Ireland, so the mid 90s, mid 90s were just and the late 90s in Ireland. I was over there for 20 years or so, constant, I don't know what it was about me in Northern Ireland. I think because I went over there whilst the Troubles were still going on, that was one thing, because there was a lot of people that wouldn't, that were spooked by the place. Yeah.
We were talking the thick of the Troubles here, It wasn't. And yes, I was involved in all kinds of dramas there, bombs going off and shootings and stuff. But it was equally happening over here. Warrington's up the road, Manchester's up the road. These places were kind of affected by all of that troubles as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of thought, no, I love it, and the people, as you know, it was like a school disco. They opened the doors, they all legged it in and danced, and then they went home.
Yeah, it had the time of their lives, didn't they?
Yeah, it was nuts. God, but obviously we were going in and doing the dirty raves, and it was like a circus. I mean, I remember going down there with one of the guys that kind of ran it, the dodgy old buggers. But mate, when they were saying, right, we're opening the doors, there would be one lad running around with about 2 or 3 bottles of poppers, just chucking it all over the floor. So when everyone ran in, they get a big whoosh. And it was nuts. I remember Steady.
Yeah.
So we went over and did a party people PA, and I took them all over there. First time in Northern Ireland, and it was near bonfire night, and some bugger started letting fireworks off in the club. So you can imagine in Northern Ireland, cacking themselves.
Everybody's hit the deck, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, what I thought was brilliant about Northern Ireland and what you were doing in the North England was, I just felt like a lot of places in England, Scotland and Ireland, they were getting roped into like too much of the hardcore sound. And your sound was always kind of that European bonsai kind of trance kind of sound. Still a bit of power and a bit of speed on it, but it just wasn't monotonous. There was a wee bit more of a melody and more of a tune on it. And that was the thing, because I remember like, one of the first times we played the Drome was Ultrasonic, and I think we got a couple of your tapes. And kind of like you, we just kind of rushed in, did a gig, how you doing? And then we'd go back to the hotel or whatever. Yeah. And then it wasn't like until like, listening to your tapes and stuff like that, maybe in the van up the road or the van to the next gig or something, like, fucking hell, this is fucking mega. And then we'd look forward to coming back to the Drome, and then we would make a point of listening to your set.
Yeah.
And there was only a few DJs that UK DJs that we genuinely looked forward to, their sets. You were one of them. Big X-Ray, cool. Northern Ireland was another. It was just, I think it was because you saw there was more to music than just the kind of stuff. It was.
There was a bit in there. It was just, it was more me not listening to everybody else and just going and buying the music that tickled my ears.
Yeah.
I also had some really good guys in the record shops who were dealing, at the time you'd have somebody that would deal with you.
Yeah.
So I had people like Steve Parry, and one of them who was brilliant is Dave Ralph. And Dave, I could go there on a Saturday morning and Dave would give me a pile of records and I'd pretty much buy the lot. He was again.
He actually knew what you were after as well and put a wee box for you.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So it was good to have that. It was good to have somebody that was, I've got all of these for you, and to be so tuned in on what you did that it was right. But I hated listening to other DJs. There was a few that I listened to. I listened to DJ Dag, who was a big. If there was an influence in that sound, it was him. He used to play hard music that sounded like a film soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
It was banging as hell, but it would have this lovely kind of strings over the top of it or something. It was really good. And I just always thought, yeah, like you say, you've got to have a bit of energy in this kind of stuff and banging and getting people jumping up and down. But if you can have a nice kind of melody within that, that's what I used to enjoy. And that's what was good about a lot of that kind of bonsai stuff. There was always a nice big break that was musical.
Yeah.
It wasn't just stabs and noises. And
Did you ever have the urge, or I don't even know if we spoke about this, have you ever dived into production back then, or was you ever tempted to?
Yeah, I liked doing a lot of bootleg stuff. Again, it was like the whole DJing thing, manipulating music. It was nice to do that. So I did like kind of bootlegs of Party People and Joe Inferno and Four for Money, Moment in Time and stuff like that. And then I made some original tunes with a couple of mates and some on my own that we kind of released. I used to work with friends up in Bradford, which is the Unique 3.
Yep.
So we ran a record distribution company. So what we would do is we'd sell all the distributed stuff that other record companies would do, and obviously we'd include ours. So I used to do the north of England. I used to drive around with my car full of records, flogging them. So I suppose that the production was me making music that we put out. And then when I worked with Matt Fulton from Liverpool and Mike Coughlin, the German producer. So
Mike's a nice guy. I met him in London years ago. It's the last time I'd seen him.
Oh yeah, well, we were out as we were called Das Trix. I had such a laugh with Mike. It was Mike that I went for a night out with Mike to a club that Boy George has invited us to. Mike used to produce the Boy George dance music stuff, right?
Oh, I never knew that.
So he was doing that, and then so we went to this party. It was that was a bit nuts. So a party with Boy George. I think Marilyn. Remember the?
Yeah.
He was there.
Was that Jesus Loves You or something like that? Was that his dancey kind of stuff?
Yeah. So Mike was involved in that. But then you'll love this one, mate. This is a doozy. Going back to Malcolm McLaren, I get a phone call. I was doing my music through Red. With Mike Coughlin was getting put out with Red Parrot, and Red Parrot was John Cicchini, who was a local Liverpool guy who had worked for DMC, and Andrea Law, and Andrea was basically Boy George's busy mate. There was a group of other people. There was Hayes, who was basically Sasha's driver. There was this combination of people, and they had a little label called Red Parrot. So we stuck stuff out as Red Parrot.
I can vaguely remember the name of the label.
Yeah. There was a few bits and bobs come out there. Parks and Wilson were involved, and then I got a phone call from, I think it was either Andrea or John, saying Mike Coughlin's working on this band. It's a group, 2 girls, and they're going to be a bit cyberpunky, and the guy that's running it wants one of them to be a scratch DJ, to actually scratch as part of the show. It must be not really, but part of the show.
Yeah.
I says, all right. He says, yeah. The guy that's put them together is Malcolm McLaren. And I was like, you're joking. And I was like, taken aback. It's like, wow, he's the guy that started hip hop and punk and everything. So I went down and I was working with these girls. I got to meet Malcolm once. But Mick Wilson, from DJ Mag, he did tracks with Malcolm McLaren. They did, I think it was the Bell song, I think they did. But that was nuts. And I got my check. It was a Coots bank check from Malcolm McLaren. And
the Queen's Bank.
It was only a couple of £100, and I was like, I need the money, but I wanted to keep the check.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a bit surreal.
That's amazing, man. That is amazing. So, I mean, there's another question. And I know you say you hardly listen to other DJs, but when you're touring and when you're holding down a resident in a popular club, you get to meet a lot of bands and DJs. Was there any ones that stuck out that you kind of thought, are they all right, or are ones you're just like, mate, you're a fucking waste of time?
There was a lot of,
because at that time everybody thought they were somebody and all that, didn't they?
Yeah. There was a lot of that. Most people were nice. When you lot turned up, they were always lovely. We had a load of Scottish. So we had you lot, we had Chill FM, and we had, what was it, Ultimate Buzz.
Yeah.
Remember them? Oh, God, right. Well,
the Callan, the guy for Ultimate Buzz, he's sadly dead now. A good few years ago he died, kind of thing.
Well, I can remember Ultimate Buzz. I can remember once, mate. Well, and the journey down from Glasgow to Birkenhead. Yeah. Right. So anyway, I pulled into the car park to start my set, and they said, "Oh, Ultimate Buzz on here yet?" So anyway, I was like, "All right, okay." So I waited in the car park, and in they pull, mate, and they'd driven all the way down here. There was 6 of them, all of their equipment in a Ford Escort. The whole lot of them,
Economy.
the whole lot had driven, chewing their faces off all the way down from, is it Glasgow they're from, or whatever it is?
Livingston, just outside Glasgow.
Right. All the way down there. They did the gig. They got back in the car. They drove home. It was just nuts. Obviously, there was Chill FM. I used to love, and
they boys are great guys.
One day, we were up in the changing room thing. We bring up the top you'd have remembered, and somebody says, "Oh, you have to try one of Macca's crackers." I don't know what you're talking about. Do you know what a Macca's cracker is? so remember Macca, he was the nutter who used to be on the electric chair, right? So I was like, what's a Macca's cracker? So he's in the corner there, mate, with a packet of Jacob's cream crackers. I was like, what's this about? He says, do you want a cracker? I was like, go on then. So he gets this lump of butter out, mate, that looked like it was rotten. It was weed butter. He made this butter out. That's one of Macca's crackers. So I had one of these crackers, mate, and that was me written off for the night. I couldn't. Macca's crackers, yeah. So that was it. He was just he'd be travelling around the country with a packet of Jacobs. And weed butter.
Passing them out. I remember one night we were all talking. It was Glenn Cyanide, MC Cyanide, and he was telling us about. He used to always, every time I met him in the Drome days, he'd always go off on one about the Proclaimers and how he would just fling eggs at them in concerts and stuff. And it just felt like he had to tell us because we were Scottish. Well, I've abused you over the years, calling you Super Gran. Super Gran, I know.
All kinds of nonsense, isn't it? So. Yeah, but I think one of the things, especially around Merseyside, is we tend to be we tend to shout abuse at people with love.
Yeah,
you know, if you see your mate across the road, you say, "Hey, dickhead," kind of thing. But it's because it's your
an
mate,
affectionate way.
Yeah. So we're constantly taking the piss out of anyone, really.
Yeah, it was
always done in love, with love and jest and stuff. Yeah,
always having a laugh. I mean, was there a time when, obviously, no going to doom and gloom or whatever, or however you feel? Was there a time when we spoke about your journey and your rise? I mean, we've all had them. Was there a time when you've kind of lost love in dance music, or just to feel? I wouldn't even say carry on, but just the business of touring and traveling. Did you fall out of love with it at any time?
When I started doing more and more back to the old school, remember this gigs, when
did that start for you? I mean, when
I would, it's like the 2000s,
right?
And then it was 10 years of just, you were kind of, can you come and do this oldie gig playing from this, from there? And that was soul destroying for me. Yes,
because you were tied to a certain time or certain music.
Yeah, it was more the fact that when I used to DJ, I loved taking people on a bit of a journey. I loved to surprise people, and when you're playing a load of oldies, you haven't got that, or not as much. Yes, you can surprise people with this classic or that classic, but once it wasn't. I didn't enjoy that. I used to really love getting new music and getting people dancing to it, but it was more this start somewhere with your DJ set and end up somewhere else.
Yep.
Musically and speed wise and whatever. And I used to thrive off that. And I think that's the bit that's kind of gone from DJing to a certain degree. I know that everything's changed. It's slightly different now, but one of the things I used to love was that. I used to love it if me and Phil would have a residence night at the Drome and they said, it's just you two tonight. There might be a 10-minute PA come on or something, but it's just you two. And it was great to get stuck in and take this crowd. And I used to love taking them really low and taking it down as if it was nothing. And then just woof, up you go there with that was the... I used to always think to myself that you've got this... As a DJ, you've got this amazing power that the whole world would love, is that the future, the next record.
Yeah.
And in your head,
you're 2-3 records ahead, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm sitting there going, if you're excited now, wait until I play this one 2 records on. And that was where I thrived. It was having that power to know, I know what you're about to hear. And if I'm getting excited about it, then I can't wait to see you lot. And that's, I love that. And that was what, as soon as that kind of went, I kind of didn't lose love in it, because I used to always love DJing. I loved, doing it and meeting my friends and stuff. But the passion for, for that, fizzled away a bit,
But I think there's something magic about it. Again, we spoke about this a good few times where, if you just do the digging and play the tunes that I know this is an easy thing. Everybody just play the same classics, but when you do, like, it's almost like Northern Soul. We do a wee bit of digging and you find that track that nobody's heard or they've forgotten all about. And I was talking to a guy I know from Birkenhead, and I was telling him about a track. I can't even remember how we got into the conversation. He goes, "That's a Trix track," and I fucking went, "Oh, right, so it is." I remember, and I couldn't remember the name. And then I actually spoke to you about I can't even remember what the track was. And it was a thing you done on the mix and all that. But shit like that, I think there's something exciting about getting the chance to play the tracks again for people who are enjoying it, because it brings back so many memories of you playing it back in the day, or equally people who have, after the scene had left them, they've found that music and then never heard it in a big club again. So there is some kind of excitement still again in doing these, maybe not every weekend, because then it would be like Groundhog Day, but once in a while, big good nights.
No, you are right, and I think if there was going to be a buzz, it would be finding that one that wasn't the big, huge, obvious track that everyone keeps playing. It was a classic, but it was one of those understated ones that was just part of the night, but everyone loves and would recognise. I get that.
Because what I find is people know the music even more now because they've listened to it at home so much, and maybe more than they did back then.
Accessible, isn't it? You can listen to DJ sets from every era now. You just go on YouTube or whatever else, and it's all there. Whereas years ago it was tapes, and it was tapes really.
You really had to track it down, didn't you? Even as a DJ, try to find out, well, maybe not so much for you, but like if I was like in a club and you heard a track, you'd want to find out what it is, but the DJ probably wouldn't tell you what track it was, because he's want to keep it because he knows he's getting gigs off the back of that track,
Obviously nowadays you just Shazam it, don't you?
That's it, innit?
Yeah.
There you go.
I do know that when I was buying stuff from like Freebies, that obviously when the drone was going well, they would go off whatever I'd bought on a Saturday, and then they'd order what I'd bought on the Monday, because they knew that there was going to be sales of that. There'd be people coming in asking for it. And I didn't hide any of the music from people, but I mean, where I was positioned, you couldn't see it anyway. It wasn't like you could see the decks up on a stage. So
when you're DJing at the Dome as well, you got a bit of saying what acts to book to get in, because is it stuff that you a fellow that's playing that's...
No, I would suggest, it was me that suggested Ultrasonic, purely because whenever I played that, is it Annihilating Rhythm, the one that slows down, was that, and the place took off. Wherever you played that, it just went nuts. And I said, purely just for that track, you've got to get these guys on. And that was one. There wasn't that many live acts other than you guys doing something that was worth putting on. Electronic music doesn't come across well live. This is why everyone now that makes electronic music is a DJ, because that's the way that they perform their music. You put them on stage with their Ableton and a few controllers, it's boring as hell, isn't it? It's not. There's nothing exciting. You can't tart it up and make it look kind of cool, because it is what it is. So there wasn't that many acts, but it was, I'd say about DJs, you kind of say, well, we try and get these on. I suggested Mr. C, who we had on. We had Moby on, and that was good. So, but it was more a case of what was working in the club. And you'd look and you kind of go, oh, well, all of this stuff on this label's good. And then we got Mario DeBellis over from that label. And he'd play a set. And just, like I said before, some of them were great, some of them were shite.
It was a good club just to be the resident for, because every week it was just going off, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was good. The layout of the place was good. Like I said before, it helped. And I think the good thing was I didn't carry on what Dave and the rest of the guys were doing before me. I kind of slowly turned it into something different. So the club evolved, and my personal take was I'd love to have taken that a little bit more commercial and make it more like the European raves. And the people that were in the club, or were, the guys that were booking and running it, wanted to go a bit more deeper and techno-y, and or the alternate, which was like happy hardcore. And it was just, I thought that club's not right for that. It was very much a rave and not a deep kind of sweatboxy kind of a place. It was definitely a big.
Every sort of club has its time, doesn't it? And I mean, I think the Drome's now a car park or something now, isn't it?
I thought it was an office block in the car park. Yeah, years ago. Yeah, I mean, even when we were doing it, mate, it was falling to bloody bits. We've been there forever. It was the Hamilton Club. It was a cabaret club in the 70s. And every week you'd be in there on a Monday, and there'd be guys there putting new floorboards in because the floor had collapsed. And it was some of the stories in there, mate. It was nuts,
how did the Vestax thing come back around? Because you ended up working full time with Vestax again, didn't you? After a while.
Yeah. After I'd say the 2000s, I then moved up to North Wales. I was married at the time, and I moved up to North Wales. And throughout my life, I've done 2 jobs, and one of them was gardening. I love gardening and DJing. So obviously in the early days, it was great. You'd be gardening all week, and it was the weekends I'd DJ. And also because I was younger, I could hack going out on a Thursday night and still go to work on the Friday, which doesn't happen anymore. So when I moved up to North Wales, I kind of more concentrated on the gardening. It's big gardens in North Wales. So I was doing well, and I love that. This is what I do now. I love it. It's my other real passion. I love being on my own, and I love being in gardens and all the rest of it. Very opposite, but that's what I was doing.
I was going to say, it's even with doing it when you're younger, there must have been something on a deeper level that was rewarding to you, like from being in a packed club, right? Yeah. Like being on top of the mountain, DJing, to then escaping away from all the maddening crowd and being by yourself, tending a garden.
I like being on my own. I like my own company. I just technically could do the DJing thing. So I think a lot of people, if they were talking about me from all that era, would if I didn't know you, I'd most probably come across as quite arrogant. I'm not good with people. Mm-hmm. I was just good at that. So gardening was something that, and I like getting stuck into stuff. I'm a grafter. I like kind of getting stuck in, and that's what I thrived at. So I was doing that up in North Wales, and I was quite happy. And I was still doing the odd DJ gig here and there. You get a thing here and there. And then out of the blue, it was Rob Peck again who started Vestax off. At that time, he was running Gemini. And he says to me, okay, years ago, Vestax had Vestax Europe, which is what Rob started. And that was in the UK. And basically, they seen the UK as a cash cow for DJing. So hence why they started it. And they put it on the back burner, and they'd been using a distributor for so many years. And it wasn't working. The distributor wasn't doing them justice. It wasn't really pushing and whatever. So they thought, we're going to revive Vestax Europe. So we'll just do our own sales direct, but we need somebody to run it. So they'd asked Rob, Toshi, who was the guy that ran Vestax, the president of the company. He asked Rob, he says, can you think of anyone that would be suitable for doing this? And he obviously bounced out a few obvious trade names that were in the business anyway, that that we know. And then he just said, well, what about Mike? And I think they kind of thought, well, he's part of the brand, he's
got history there.
That, and I've got this, I'm part of the family kind of thing with them. So he says, would you be interested? And I was like, well, yeah, it's a dream job. If I explain what we go on and explain about what you do with Vestax, it was just, this is incredible. As a geek, it was unbelievable. So my wife at the time works for Virgin Atlantic. I was very fortunate. She got me some tickets. I fly over to Tokyo. I have a meeting with them, and they just says, "Can you run it?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I do a bit of gardening. I can't not do that." I had to give up the gardening eventually. But I ended up starting to run Vestax Europe.
Is there no lot of pressure with that, Mike? Is there no? Are you just going into that as like a geek loving it? Are you not thinking about the pressure?
No. You've got to think of this first. Forget the geekiness. Forget the equipment. I was doing importation of goods through docks and paying VAT and all of that. It was just like, what's this all about? You know,
right.
You know, what's it called? I'm trying to even think of the terminology they were using, and it was just
customs and excise and all that kind of shit.
I'm doing customs forms. I'm doing shipping. Anyway, once you get your head around all that, it's just posting stuff here and there. You know, it is that, but it's quite complicated. It was when then they said, okay, right, we're going to start getting you involved in the, you know, in more involved with the Vestax family. This is the bit where the geekiness just exploded. So Vestax would do a thing once a year, and it was an international distributor meeting. And it was normally held at a place called the New Otini Hotel in Tokyo. New Otini is the hotel that was used in one of the James Bond films.
Your old friend Daniel Craig.
No, it was Sean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He used to live down the road. No, he didn't. So I forget which one it is. Anyway, it's the one where it's all in Japan. New Otini's in there. So as an international distributor meeting, you've basically got the majority of the distributors from around the world in a room with the Vestax guys. And the first day is a bit boring, so they're just going through, here's what we've got, and here's our new products, showing them whatever, here's a bit of artwork. Then you do a lap of honour around all of these guys, and they'd all stand up, do a little presentation. This is what we're doing in our country to promote the brand. Here's some ideas, here's a DJ that we support, blah, blah, blah. Then the next day, you kind of go, okay, now we're going to show you some new equipment that you've never seen before, right? And I remember this first meeting was in 2009, and all the guys from Serato were there. So the full team of Serato were there. And so in showing you new equipment. Then Serato are telling us about the new features in Serato that aren't coming out for 6 months. So you're sitting there going, wow, I'm getting this nuts.
Yeah.
The day after, we're showing them new bits of technology. So it might just be a crossfader that we've designed, or a pressure pad, or something. And it was absolutely outrageous. You know, if you're a geek base, and so you're there and you're talking to the software companies, and you're in the midst of making a product that's not coming out for a year.
Yeah.
It was nuts. It was really.
And you're getting paid to do it. You're just being paid to be in geek heaven.
Yeah, and then okay, tonight we're going out in Akihabara or whatever, and you're like, oh, unbelievable. One of the best things that I took from that, there was a guy who was he represented Vestax for our French distributor. His name's Jerome Henry. Jerome went on to work for Vestax, but I can remember this one meeting, and there's a day where the Japanese just would say to you, okay, forget everything. What would be your dream thing? Forget what, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. It might not be possible now. What would it be? And we went around the room, and there's a lot of obvious things. Well, I want to mix it with 7 decks and all this kind of caper. So he gets to Jerome, and he says, when I was a kid, I always wanted to touch music. I used to want to grab hold of the bass and squeeze it. And as something as a kid, he could obviously imagined doing this. And he was like, I just want to feel and touch the music. There's a few people having a bit of a giggle, and whatever. Anyway, by the by, Jerome ended up working for Vestax, and him and his wife moved over to Tokyo. And this is what was amazing. They took all of that and they stuck with it with Jerome. And Jerome was the person that was the head of a product called the VCI 380. And the VCI 380 was a DJ controller for Serato that was the first one ever to have pads on it that were pressure sensitive. And it was like, okay, you can touch the music here. So Jerome had made this product and literally taken this idea that was a dream as a kid and made it. And the more you pressed on the pressure pads, the more effect and more whatever. Yeah. And it was incredible to be involved with a company that had taken an idea that was so
and went with
a child's dream, and then he eventually made this product with them. It was nuts. We made the trade shows we did with Vestax were even more nuttier when I got to that stage. We were doing NAMM show, which is the North American Music Meeting or whatever. It's held in LA. Anaheim, just over the road from Disney. So we go there each year, we put a trade show on, whatever. So you do a trade show in Germany, you're going to get a load of German pop stars. You do one in England, you're going to get the local celebrities in England.
Yeah.
You're in LA, mate. I'm DJing, mate. I'm doing this little, just mucking about with some equipment. And I look up and there's Stevie Wonder. Literally in front. So Stevie Wonder's, you go on my Facebook, there's a picture of me with him. He walks past. The next thing I'm walking down, I thought, I'm going to go into this other hall. It's all the drums. Is it Tommy Lee, the drummer?
Yeah.
He's there. I met all the guys from Kiss.
Wow.
Like Richie Hawtin was always there. BT was there. But it was these mega stars that were just kind of waltzing around. I went to a party at the Playboy Mansion.
Amazing.
It was Hugh
Hefner's Playboy Mansion.
Yeah, he wasn't there. I didn't see any women or none of these play bunny things, right? We were just kind of gone in. You see the front door, you're ushered around the side, and you're in like a function tent thing. So unfortunately, I didn't get to see. It wasn't like, I'm swanning around and sitting in the crypt and going.
But you were at the Playboy Mansion, mate.
Oh, mate! So it was bizarre. So you're involved in the music industry, and you're in LA, and it was incredible times. Yeah, loved it.
Absolutely brilliant, man. I mean, it's been some journey, innit? I mean, you're happy where you're at just now and all that, but do you ever miss all that madness, or are you just glad to have been such a big part of your life?
I don't miss some of it.
Or the stress and all that and the bullshit.
If you just kind of go, okay, what would you like to do? I'd like to just dive in, do a bit of DJing, and then just be back on my couch at home.
Yeah.
And not have to do with anything. You know what I mean? Just transport me there, do the thing, and then come back. Recently, not only you've been kind of
pestering you
to get into this again, and I was really hesitant, and then I've had other people asking me. And I thought, no, I'm not, and yes, there is people that would like me to do it, but in my head, it's kind of finished. I've kind of thought, no, I'm happy what I'm doing. I'm no spring chicken anymore. Yeah. And I really love gardening. If I concentrate on this, this is what I intended to do to retire, if you get me. This is my out thing. Unfortunately for me, all three of my children have recently said to me, well, why don't you DJ again? And it's them that's kind of made me think, well, you know what? I'll do this for some fun and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
Hesitant. Oh, bloody kids. Why did they have to kind of come out with that? But they've never seen me do it.
And now they're at an age where they can even come to the club, maybe, no?
Yeah, well, my eldest daughter, definitely, she's 25. So it's them that have kind of persuaded me to at least dabble and see what's what, So I'll be putting mixes together and giving them to friends and seeing what they think and whatever.
Mate, you're no naive. It's not like you're going, I'm going to give everything up and give the DJ a go again. It's just kind of like, I think it's great to have that option of jumping in and out it when you decide, I'll fucking do that. I'll do that.
I've always done that, mate. If the gardening's been going well, that's been my income. If I get the odd DJ gig, happy days. If I get more DJ gigs, then okay, well, I might jump ship. As long as they've got a mower in the garage and a strimmer, I'm working. I can jump back to that whenever I want. I fall back onto that all day long. So whenever I've had the option to kind of either make a bit more money and I've enjoyed it, or have this amazing experience, then I'm fortunate enough to jump into it, have my fun, and if it kind of fizzles out or stops, then I've got my fail safe, which is walking up and down with a lawnmower. Yeah.
Do you know what's mad, Mike? Just through talking to you, it's kind of like, it's almost like you've been living in this world of opposites where it's, like for somebody who likes to be alone, you've been, a big part of dance music, the club DJ, and then even what you're doing with Vestax, and meeting all these people and going to all these trade shows, but at the same time, you prefer being alone.
If I feel comfortable with people or a situation, I'm okay. Before, how old was I? 47. I ended up getting diagnosed with being autistic. So it was a week before my 50th birthday, I got the diagnosis through.
How did that come about? Why?
But one of my children was diagnosed at the age of 2, and it's very common that when adults kind of read into it, and I was reading all these things and going, oh, this is autistic, this is autistic. I was thinking, oh, everyone does that. Everyone does that. What are you on about? This is not weird. And to the realization was, wait, no, I do that. And I feel like that. And it dawned on me, obviously at that time, we just discovered my son was on the spectrum. He's, fortunately for us, it's literally, they say it's a spectrum. He's like me. He's kind of high functioning. You can deal with life. It's just certain situations aren't kind of cool. But I didn't want to make a fuss and go, oh, me too. You know what I mean? It wasn't like that. So I just it bubbled away. I unfortunately got divorced, and I kind of slowly realised that this was niggling my head. And I was doing all the online tests, which are all pretty much the same. So, if you just say, oh, I don't like people, it must be, oh, yeah, you're on the spectrum. But it's a bit deeper than that. Yeah. So I kind of got it. I thought, right, I'll get diagnosed, and they'll either say, no, you're not, or yes, you are. And at least I'll know, I'll understand myself a bit better. And I got diagnosed, and it was a bit of a shocker, even though I kind of knew really that's what it was. So that's what if a lot of people like me would feel very comfortable in a geeky situation because I'm a geek. Yeah. So if I was to sit down with my mates that work at Ableton, I could feel comfortable because I can always talk about something. There's always something that I can talk about. And the same with you, we talk about music or something that we have a common interest in. If you took me to a party and it was just chit chat, oh no.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Doesn't happen. I can't just, hey, how are you? What do you do? I don't give a shit. So it's a bit of a weird one. And like I said, we're very fortunate that we're what's known as high functioning. It was Asperger's that it would have been considered. It's changed now. It's called high functioning autistic. And it's not, I'm not, well, you've known me for long enough. There's nothing kind of wrong with me. It's just some situations I deal with would be different. If I was waiting in a queue to buy a pasty in Greg's, mate, I'd be shitting myself. I'd be proper inside, panicking, worrying. It's horrible kind of feeling.
Worrying about what? Just somebody talking to you?
It's just the anxiety of it. Right. Have I got the right money? Is the woman going to talk to me? Do I have to answer back? Will I say something wrong? Your excuse me, autistic people mask, and that's what you've seen for most of the time, is the fact that I put on this front. And so you've met DJ Trix, but most of the time you've not met me.
Yeah, Mike.
Sorry, just needed a drink.
That's all right.
So it's helped me with some things.
I think it's helped you find answers, as in, oh, that's why I've been doing this or whatever. That's kind of...
Yeah, there's certain things that you do. I kind of calculate things in my head differently than the majority of people. But I always kind of look at when people say about autism and the spectrum, it's like, to be honest with you, everybody is on there somewhere. Yeah. Everyone doesn't feel comfortable with some situation or whatever. And then obviously as it progresses, unfortunately, you've got those poor people that kind of can't deal with an awful lot of stuff. Yeah. Some of these people are absolute geniuses at some things, but they can't tie the shoelaces. And it's a hard one to explain. It's just, think about your head's just wired differently, and that's it really. So the way that you might think of something, I'll see it from a completely different angle. Yeah.
I mean, I think in many ways you'd need to look at it as a I hate using a lot of words like a blessing and all that, but even just being that young guy designing his ultimate DJ setup, then to design the mixer, it's probably because your brain was wired that way that you felt you needed to do that. No chasing money, no chasing anything. Just like, I would love to.
It's the obsession of it. You get kind of stuck on something, and it is one of those things. This is why I love gardening, because I get obsessed with it. You know, I'll want to do things so it looks perfect in a garden and stuff like that, and it works for me. That
is there a bit of OCD in there as well, Mike? Do you think, or you know,
no, I wouldn't say OCD. I just like
it to be right.
Yeah, so it's not OCD where I'm like, oh my god, I'm obsessive with it. I'm not like that. But, I like doing a good job. If you get my drift, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. Well, even less, it's took you long enough to kind of finally kind of get in the mood to sit down. I mean, I don't know how long we've been talking about doing this kind of thing, you know. Do you think that's part of it? You're kind of going, is it something I want to do? Or
it was one. Well, we get on. So I knew I could comfortably do this. There's been a few people who have asked me to kind of have a chat and stuff like that. And I know that they would be all a bit show busy and, you know what I mean? But I understand, I get you, and I feel comfortable. So I kind of thought it would be a good way to do this. And again, back to my children, not really. I mean, I talked to my daughter about all these stories because she's old enough for me to kind of explain some of them. But my younger kids, kind of, I can't tell them half the stories.
Don't tell them older.
You know, and a lot of them, and a lot of it, they won't really understand. You know, they're not really into that kind of stuff, dancey stuff. So, but
my daughter just kind of rolls her eyes because I'll go, you know, it's like almost like our generation invented the feel. Like, I remember text messages when it first started and all that, and they're just like, oh, here he goes. You know, but just like you mentioned to me, like the digital watches come out, and I even thought, "Fuck, that's right." I remember that was like a mind blower when that, and all these wee things
with the red.
The red. the silver watch with the red display, and you're just going, that was so future. It was. I don't even know how you could explain that to a kid now. No, I know, but like you show them a 7-inch single. You know what I mean? They're just like, what are you doing with that? Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird CD or something. It's just... it's mad, man. I think... But that's like you said before about that era of where technology exploded, and you kind of think how fast this has all gone, that the fact that we were playing records, CDs arrived, and now CDs have gone. Yep. No, and you kind of go, what? How can a format of just come and go that quick? I know. And now we're onto another format, and some people would say we're listening to more music than ever now. Yeah. Which listening to a lot of crap music. Yeah, I think the one thing that was really good about years ago was there's quite a financial commitment to putting music out. If you wanted to put a record out, I'll show them. Funny enough, I've got a storage container, and in there was some of my old records. And I was showing my daughter the other day some acetates and test pressings and stuff. And I was going to feel the weight of that. And she was like, it's rock hard and whatever. What is it? And I was like, that's an acetate. That's a dub plate, you call it. And even just getting them done, just to see what it sounded like on a record player, was quite an expense. Yep. So whereas nowadays you just upload it and wait for your money, and here's your 2p per track that you sell on Beatport or whatever. There's so much stuff out there that's just crap that hasn't been filtered by the fact that somebody's thought, yeah, it's worth putting this out. Yep. It's just been put out. So whereas years ago you'd be going through all these records, and there might be 60 or 70 records you go through. Now you've got thousands getting uploaded every week. And picking the track is just like never-ending minefield. A bit more quality control because there was a bit more of an outlay to get it pressed up and all that. Yeah, but, just to get to test presses, you're talking 400 or 500 quid, aren't you? Yep. And then what was like 50, 100 quid to get an acetate made and all that. Then that only lasted so many plays. Yeah, so you're talking all that money just to see if a record works, and so. Yeah, so the way it is nowadays is great. It means that everyone can get their music out, but it also means you've got so much more stuff to wade through until you find those decent tracks. I know. I found that recently, just scrolling through Beatport there. You're just like, how many of them? Because I think what I'll do is I'll go through it all, as many as I can, and then now all I'll do is look at the new tracks each day, and you're going to go, but there's another 200 tracks been out. I know, it's mental. It's crazy. Sitting there listening to 200. and then the shelf life of them all is no, it's forgotten about the next day and all that kind of stuff. It's a great time, but a mad time as well, I think, for music, for being a DJ, for being an artist or whatever. I think it's an exciting time. And maybe to wrap it up, is there any sort of advice you would give to anybody trying to cut their teeth coming through as a DJ or music producer or whatever? Is there any kind of nugget of wisdom apart from don't do it?
I would not think about the technical side of it as the important bit. It definitely isn't. It's about music. It's about playing the right music at the right time. And although if you're learning to DJ, you obviously have to learn how to technically put it all together. Don't look at that as, it's a bit like riding a bike. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to do that bit of it without thinking, but you're thinking about what the music is. Like I said before, you've got this amazing power of wow, I'm going to play this next. So harnessing that is that's where the artmanship is. It's knowing the music and knowing what will work. Technically is by the by. If you're doing a scratch mixing show, you've got to be technical. But even then, like I said before, it's about exciting people with music, and that's one of the DJs that worked in Atmosphere was one of the warm-up guys. He couldn't mix two of the same records together. His sets were absolutely amazing because he just played the tunes at the right time throughout the night. Yeah. And so it wasn't about this, I've done this with 4 decks and pressed these buttons and all the rest of it. It's about music. Yeah,
being passionate about the music you're playing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, you've got to learn to listen to music differently as well, and listen to the bits in that music, not just as a whole track. So if you're mixing one into the other or the combinations, then they've got to kind of match in some way or enhance each other. Mm-hmm. So that's the bit when you learn your music and you kind of go, oh, that track will work well with that. In your head on the fly, that's when you've kind of mastered it, I would say.
Yeah. Well, Mike, DJ Trix, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, mate. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Yeah. What time is it, mate? Is it kind of?
That's a good few hours we've been talking, no?
No, I know. I've got 4 lawns in the morning.
Well, listen, you take care, and hopefully I'll twist your arm and you'll get up to Glasgow and do a wee set for us up here.